Welcome back to WION World is One. You're watching Speed News with me, Vidur Kathuria. Let's get started. US President Donald Trump says there's a good chance of a deal to end the war in Ukraine following recent US talks with Kyiv. His comments come as a US envoy prepares to travel to Russia for follow-up negotiations. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio expressed optimism about progress despite the challenges of ending the more than 3-year conflict, emphasizing a goal of preserving Ukraine's sovereignty and independence. The talks build on a US blueprint for peace developed over the past 2 weeks. US President Donald Trump has confirmed he recently spoke with Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro amid rising tensions between the two countries. The US has increased military presence in the Caribbean, while Trump warned that Venezuelan airspace should be considered closed. Following his statement, 6 airlines cancelled flights to Venezuela, although Caracas airport continues to operate normally. Venezuela's National Assembly says it will form a special commission to investigate US strikes on suspected drug trafficking boats off its coast and in the Eastern Pacific. Congressional President Jorge Rodriguez said the probe will examine a Washington Post report claiming that US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered the killing of everyone aboard one of the boats during a September strike, and that a second strike targeted 2 survivors. Maduro and his government have denied any involvement in crime and have accused the US of seeking regime change out of a desire to control Venezuela's vast oil reserves. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has dismissed US President Donald Trump's threat to bar Pretoria from the 2026 G20 summit, calling the claims baseless. In a national broadcast, Ramaphosa insisted South Africa remains a founding and committed member of the G20. Trump had said the US would not invite South Africa, repeating allegations of genocide against Afrikaans and land seizures, accusations Ramaphosa labeled blatant misinformation. This year's G20, hosted by South Africa, wrapped up with broad international participation except from the United States, which skipped key meetings citing those same allegations. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has formally requested a presidential pardon, a move that could derail years of corruption trials. Netanyahu says the cases against him are tearing the country apart and hampering his ability to govern, but he has admitted no wrongdoing. Opposition leader Yair Lapid has pushed back, urging President Herzog to reject the request unless Netanyahu admits guilt, shows remorse and leaves politics. Herzog's office confirms the pardon request has been received and will be reviewed, but traditionally Israeli pardons follow a conviction and an acknowledgement of wrongdoing, neither of which Netanyahu has done. India is set to begin discussions on the potential purchase of Russian fighter jets and a missile defense system during President Vladimir Putin's visit this week. According to Bloomberg, New Delhi and Moscow share a special strategic partnership under which India may consider acquiring Su-57 jets and an advanced S-500 missile defense shield. Putin's state visit, his first to India since 2021, runs from December 4th to 5th and will include the 23rd India-Russia Annual Summit, talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi and a state banquet hosted by President Draupadi Murmu. Bangladesh says it expects India to extradite deposed Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina at the earliest opportunity, but insists the issue won't affect bilateral ties. Hasina was sentenced to death in absentia for crimes against humanity linked to last year's crackdown on student protests. Dhaka may seek her return through the International Criminal Court. Separately, a national investigation into the Bangladesh Rifles mutiny, which killed 74 people, alleges involvement of Awami League figures and external forces. Report names former lawmaker Sheikh Fazle Noor Taposh as chief coordinator, claiming the mutiny occurred with Hasina's approval. Pope Leo has arrived in Beirut, greeted warmly by officials and residents alike. Along the airport road, Hezbollah supporters took a leading role in welcoming him, with crowds filling the capital as his convoy passed through Beirut's southern suburbs. Al-Mahdi scouts and local residents lined the streets, including Dahieh, a Hezbollah stronghold hit by Israeli raids in recent years. Supporters waved portraits of the Pope. This marks Pope Leo's first visit to Lebanon and his first trip outside Italy and the Vatican since his election in May, fulfilling a wish of his predecessor, Pope Francis. Supporters of former President Jair Bolsonaro gathered outside Brasilia's National Museum to demand amnesty for him. Bolsonaro is serving a 27-year prison sentence after being convicted by a panel of Supreme Court justices for attempting to overthrow Brazil's democracy following his 2022 election loss. The plot included plans to kill President Lula da Silva and to incite an insurrection in early 2023. Fewer than 100 people attended the rally despite organizers' expectations of a larger turnout. A dozen migrants remain stranded at Chile's border with Peru, caught between threats of deportation and a militarized frontier. Peru has deployed soldiers and police to block the southern border after Chilean presidential frontrunner José Antonio Cast vowed to expel undocumented migrants shortly after taking office. This prompted a surge of migrants to the Chacaluta crossing in Arica, many of whom are now stuck, unable to move forward or return. Cast, who faces leftist Gianat Jara in next month's runoff, has made strict immigration policies a cornerstone of his campaign. Poll workers began tallying votes Sunday evening as Honduras held elections for a new president, Congress, and hundreds of local offices. Voting was extended in many areas to accommodate remaining voters, and no major issues were initially reported. The presidential race had been dominated by accusations of vote manipulation until last week, when US President Donald Trump endorsed candidate Nasri Asfura and announced he would pardon former President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who is serving a 45-year US prison sentence for drug trafficking. Trump's interventions highlight renewed US involvement in Latin America. In India, the National Investigation Agency conducted early Monday searches at multiple locations in Jammu and Kashmir linked to the Jaish white-collar module and the Delhi Red Fort blast. Raids took place at the home of arrested Maulvi Irfan in Nadigam, Shopian, as well as the residences of Dr. Adil and Dr. Muzammil in Malangpura, Pulwama, and Amir in Sambura, Pulwama. Authorities are seeking material evidence as Maulvi Irfan has emerged as a key connection in the investigation. Sri Lanka has declared a state of emergency after cyclone Ditwa triggered floods and landslides that have claimed at least 334 lives. President Anura Kumara Dissanayake warned that recovery will take time, calling it the country's most challenging national disaster. The Indian Air Force, working closely with Sri Lankan authorities, conducted major rescue and evacuation missions in the landslide-hit Kotmale region, which remains cut off by road. Under Operation Sagar Bandhu, the IAF rescued dozens, including critically injured patients, as relief efforts continue in the devastated areas. In Thailand, floods have claimed over 170 lives and left more than 100 people injured. The government has announced an ex gratia payment of $62,000 for victims, but public criticism is growing over the handling of the disaster. In response, 2 local officials have been suspended over alleged failures in flood management as authorities face mounting pressure to improve rescue and relief efforts. In Indonesia, floods and landslides have claimed at least 442 lives, injured over 600 and left more than 400 people missing. Video from the National Disaster Mitigation Agency shows entire neighborhoods submerged under brown floodwaters. Rescue operations are hampered by bad weather and limited equipment, slowing aid delivery to affected areas, including Sibolga city. Reports say desperate residents are breaking into shops and wading through floodwaters to access food, medicine and other essentials as the country struggles to cope with the disaster. A new storm is moving into the mid-Atlantic and northeast, expected to drop up to a foot of snow by Tuesday. The National Weather Service has issued a winter weather advisory for Lewis County, New York through Monday night. Officials say the area could see 4 to 8 inches with the heaviest snow across Tug Hill and the southern half of the county. Travelers should prepare for snow-covered roads and reduce visibility, and officials are urging everyone to drive with caution. South Korean e-commerce giant Coupang has apologized after a major data breach exposed personal information of 33.7 million users through unauthorized data access. The breach exposed customers' names, email addresses, phone numbers, shipping addresses, and certain order histories, but not payment details or login credentials. Coupang said the unauthorized access of personal information was believed to have started on June 24th through overseas servers. The company says it detected the breach on November 18th, reported it to the authorities, and is now working with law enforcement and regulators. The Australian Securities Exchange or ASX announcement platform went down on Monday, forcing trading halts on companies set to release price-sensitive information. The ASX says trading and settlement are not affected, but the outage adds to a series of performance issues criticised by Australian Securities and Investment Commission and the Reserve Bank of Australia. The outage comes after CME Group, the world's largest exchange operator, on Friday suffered one of its longest outages in years, halting trading across stocks, bonds, commodities and currencies. According to a Bloomberg News report, data center operator Cyruson has installed additional backup cooling capacity at its Aurora, Illinois data center after a failure last week triggered an outage at CME Group for several hours. Cyruson has said that it has restored stable and secure operations at its Chicago 1 data center in Aurora, Illinois, and also they have installed additional redundancy to the cooling systems to further enhance continuity. Last week on Friday, CME Group faced an outage which caused trading in futures, commodities, currencies and bonds to be halted for several hours. At the start of the new month, Asian markets showed no clear direction, with stocks alternating between gains and losses. Traders eye a flood of economic data ahead of an expected interest rate cut from the Federal Reserve this month. An Asian stock gauge fluctuated after capping its best week weekly in advance in about 2 months. Wall Street futures pointed to a lower open despite a reversal on Friday in a volatile month. Data in the week ahead will provide cues to the Fed rate path next year. Inflation and consumer demand data will be of crucial interest. Investors are also getting ready for possible changes in the leadership of the central bank. President Trump said he has chosen the next Fed boss, and White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett said the markets were prepared for the announcement of a new Fed chair. OPEC Plus agreed on Sunday to hold oil production steady through the January-March period of 2026, keeping about 3.24 million barrels per day of voluntary cuts intact. The decision, which includes a new capacity assessment mechanism for setting future baselines from 2027, reflects the group's caution amid concerns of a looming global supply glut and weakening demand. Following the meeting, oil prices rose, with Brent crude rising above $63 per barrel and US crude also rising early nearly 1% to over $59 a barrel as markets welcome the pause in output hikes even as supply concerns persist. However, analysts warn that elevated supplies, especially if more sanctioned producers return, could exert downward pressure on prices through 2026, keeping market outlook cautious. Bitcoin has dropped below $88,000 in early Asia trading as broad risk of sentiment weighed on cryptocurrencies. Ethereum and Solana, among other tokens, also saw a sharp decline. The drop came amid growing macroeconomic uncertainty, with investors wary of tighter monetary policy and fading rate cut hopes, triggering a wave of selling across crypto markets. Some analysts argue this dip could mark a potential entry point given historic patterns where price corrections attract long-term institutional interest. Still, many traders remain cautious. Volatility is elevated and broader market conditions, particularly shifting global interest rate expectations, continue to affect sentiment. Sports now. Virat Kohli rolled back the years with his 52nd ODI century as India beat South Africa by 17 runs to take a 1-0 lead in the 3-match series. Fans packed the JSCA International Stadium in Ranchi. To Kohli and Rohit Sharma, the veteran duo added 136 runs for the second wicket before Rohit fell for 57. India then lost 4 more wickets for just 39 runs, but Kohli held firm, reaching his 52nd ODI century of 102 balls, his first since an unbeaten 100 against Pakistan earlier this year. With this run, Kohli now holds the record for the most hundreds in a single format, surpassing the joint record he shared with Sachin Tendulkar. Spanish film The Good Daughter has created history at Estonia's Tallinn Black Nights Film Festival. For the first time ever, one film has won both the Grand Prix and the Audience Award. The movie dominated the 29th edition, which honored filmmakers across 6 sub-festival programs. The event took place from November 7th to November 23rd. The Spanish drama emerged as the biggest winner of the year. Palme d'Or winner Cristian Mungiu is gearing up for a return to the Cannes Festival in 2026. The Romanian filmmaker will debut his first English-language film, F. Jord. Actors Sebastian Stan and Renit Rensiv will star in the movie. They play a mixed Romanian-Norwegian couple who move back to the wife's childhood village with their children. The film marks Mungiu's return to directing after 3 years. The 57-year-old is currently attending the Marrakesh Film Festival. Veteran Kannada actor Mysore Umesh has died at the age of 80. According to reports, he had been battling cancer. The late star rose to fame in the 1960s with his breakthrough role in Makkala Rajya. The film firmly established him in the Kannada industry. His other notable works include Anupama and Guru Shishyaru. The film fraternity is mourning the loss of the respected actor.